I'm Maggie Hrdlicka, Management Information Specialist for the City of Janesville. Thanks for tuning in to Park Place Views, the monthly program where we highlight what's going on in your local government, the City of Janesville. As always, I'd like to thank JATV for helping us produce this monthly program. On the last episode of Park Place Views, I sat down with City Manager Mark Freitag and Finance Director Tim Allen, and we talked about the 2015 city budget, as well as other finance-related issues going on in the City of Janesville. If you missed it and are interested in seeing that program, you can find it on our website under the Publications and Videos page, or you can find it on JATV's YouTube page, where you'll find all Park Place Views episodes, as well as tons of other videos of community events. But today I'm joined by Chief David Moore of the Janesville Police Department. We're going to talk about the police department and some policing-related issues in Janesville. Chief Moore began with the Janesville Police Department in 1977. He holds a bachelor's degree in criminal justice administration from Mount Senario College. He also holds a master's degree in public and corporate communications from University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. He was appointed to police chief in 2009 after a national search, but he is a lifetime Janesville resident and is very active in the community. Thanks for being here, Chief Moore.
Certainly.
And giving us the opportunity to learn more about the police department. I talked a little bit about your background, but can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, both personally and professionally?
Well, I'm very fortunate to have a dedicated staff at the police department. It makes my job very easy, and likewise, my family is very supportive of my career choice, and they've been very supportive over the years.
Great. Well, and you've been part of the police department for 38 years, if I'm doing the math correctly, and chief for about 6. How has it been leading the organization? Do you have a different perspective from when you were an officer?
Things have changed drastically, and it's probably because of my age, I guess, is some of it. But yeah, when I was a young police officer, we responded to our calls for service. We worked our traffic assignments, but we pretty much got off those calls for service as quickly as we could, and then went to the next call or call for service. And now we ask our officers to be much more engaged. We ask them to be problem solvers. We ask them to dig into the core issues as to why these circumstances are occurring. We dig into what are the neighborhood dynamics and how can we solve them. If it's a domestic situation, what are the family dynamics and how can we help and solve those issues. So it's much more dynamic, and our officers are much more involved.
Okay, great. Can you tell me a little bit more about the police department's structure, from administration to officers? And I know you have some interesting tactical units that work for you.
Yeah, we have 102 police officers. At one time we had 106, but we're down to 102 now. And we also have 18 civilians. We have some very large units, our patrol unit, which is most of the officers. But then we also have a detective bureau, and we have 5 officers assigned to the schools. That's 5% of our workforce actually are assigned right into the schools. It's interesting. We, as a profession, take very young individuals, many times fresh out of college. We hire them. We send them to the academy. We offer some field training afterwards. But they're largely inexperienced, and we put them out into some of the most trying circumstances in our community. These young officers are assigned to second shift and third shift, where we have most of our activity. They're out there alone in the middle of the night. We expect them to work weekends and holidays, and surprisingly, year in and year out and year after year, we're successful, and they perform their jobs well. They do it in a safe manner. And we have many safeguards that get us there. We have good training, good policy. But another element that really helps us to keep those officers safe is our supervision. And we have lieutenants and sergeants assigned to the shift. And almost always we have 2 supervisors on. So I've got one supervisor managing the department from within the department, and then another supervisor out in the field offering that assistance to these young officers. And we think that that is very important. We've also had some specialized units, and I'll mention just a few of them. I won't go through all of them, but we have a domestic violence intervention team, which has helped us a lot. A few years ago, we recognized that our officers were doing a very good job in investigating domestic violence incidents, but we weren't helping our victims as much as we thought that we could. So we kind of stepped back and looked at our process for domestic violence and realized that if we recontacted the victim of a domestic violence incident within the first 72 hours and offered the community's assistance, in particular the YWCA, that we could break the cycle of violence and help our victims. And that's worked out very well. I have a team of officers that volunteer to help with this, and we've been able to drive our domestic violence rate down by about 13%, and we've held it there for a number of years. This is really important because 2/3 of our homicides are domestic violence related. So when we put our resources into these domestic violence incidents and we can actually solve them for a family, we feel we're actually saving lives is what we're doing. And also it gives us another chance to meet with young children that are witnessing this violence and change that cycle of violence. We also have a gang unit. Our officers are very good at identifying all of the gang members in our community. And with that, we're able to monitor that activity. Unfortunately for Janesville, it's largely graffiti is the type of related crime that we have with our gang members. But nonetheless, we monitor and work with families to try and get kids out of gangs. But also that intelligence base of gang members is very important. I'll give you one example. A few years ago, we had a tragic homicide. A young man met some biker gang members in the area of the 5 Points. They exchanged some communication, and two of the bikers chased this van down and shot the young man that was in the van. Our fact set, or our clues going into this case, was that it was two biker-type individuals riding Harley-Davidson motorcycles, had goatees and black leather jackets. Well, that's not a whole lot of information to solve a homicide with, but fortunately, our gang members had encountered some biker-type individuals about 4 months before, covertly obtained some photographs of them, and we had them on file at the police department. So as we started our investigation, we already had the suspect's photo. And as we worked through more information as it came in, within 4 hours, we identified who the suspect was, largely because of that work that had been done 4 months before. Within 8 hours, we had interviewed the individual and realized that he was being untruthful with us. And within 72 hours, we had the individual in custody. And those are some really good time numbers for a homicide that was largely unknown in the beginning. But that work started 4 months before that shot was ever fired. So that's the importance that we see in working with the gang members. We also have a SWAT team. They are a group of highly trained individuals that help us out with gun incidents or barricaded person incidents. We're fortunate that we don't need to use them much, but we need that skill set when we have those critical incidents in our community. And I can tell you that when we have those incidents, our community will be judged on how we respond and take care of those incidents. So our SWAT guys, they train once a month, and I'll stack that SWAT team up against anybody in the community. The other days of the month, they're out there, patrol officers and detectives and school officers performing the other duties, but they just have this higher level of skill for those critical, infrequent but critical incidents. We have a street crimes unit that does our drug investigations. We have our drug officers work at street level drug houses and street level drug sales. That's an intentional decision by the police department. We could have those officers, and there's 6 of them and a sergeant. We could have them working, I'll call them the big drug dealer, and we could spend months and months and try and chase down this singular big drug dealer that brings drugs into the area. And these officers would be successful. They'd be able to make that arrest. But it doesn't change a community, and it doesn't change a neighborhood, because somebody else will step up to the plate and be selling drugs again. The money's just too easy. So we prefer to put our resources in our neighborhoods and take out those local drug houses that can really ruin a neighborhood and ruin a community. So that's the focus of our street crimes unit. We have some other groups that we work with. We've got a liaison advisory committee, a Latino liaison advisory committee for the community. We are just working at reviving our African American liaison committee for the department. And what we like with those 2 committees is that we get good input and information from those parts of our community. But those are just an example of some of the specialized units that the officers work in. All of them that I mentioned, the officers volunteer for these units and work extra hard to make them work.
Good. Well, it's good to know that our police officers are specializing in those important areas of focus, working on our behalf. So, Chief, we talked a little bit about the police department, but obviously it's too complex of an organization to talk about in a short program like this today. If residents have more questions about the police department structure or any of those units that you talked about, where could they find more information?
Right. Go to our website. We have our annual report out there on the website, and it really gives a nice snapshot of all of the activities of the police department, and that'd be just a real great place to learn just all that we do.
Okay, great. Well, let's move a little away from our discussion about the police department, and I just want to talk about some of the issues that are current events and you often hear about in the news or on the streets of Janesville. So first, the 4th Ward neighborhood. That's a neighborhood that you often hear there's a perception that there's a higher level of crime in that neighborhood than in other areas in Janesville. Can you talk a little bit about the police department's perspective on that neighborhood?
Yeah, first I'll say the 4th Ward neighborhood is safe. I travel down there often. Many times I take my wife with me, and we feel that it's a safe neighborhood. We think that we have some work to do there in terms of probably more the disorder end of the world, but it is a safe neighborhood. But I want to take you back to our post-GM community and our post-recession community. About 5 or 6 years ago, we recognized that Janesville's a wonderful community. We have beautiful parks, good government, wonderful schools, a great workforce, and we have all these wonderful amenities. But as the economy went bad and as we lost General Motors, we at the police department looked at ourselves as being very important to economic development in Janesville. And by that I mean that if we keep Janesville safe, citizens will move to Janesville and businesses will come to Janesville. And conversely, if we don't keep Janesville safe, or the perception of being safe, people will just go someplace else to live. Everybody wants to go to a safe community. And businesses will go where there are good employees and where there is a safe community. So we see our charge as being very important to provide that perception of safety for the community. And it's very important with our economic growth as we move forward here with these years. To that end, we knew that if we kept the 4th Ward and the Look West neighborhood safe, all of Janesville would be judged to be safe. So we have put a lot of our resources into the Look West and 4th Ward neighborhoods. I'll guarantee you they are the best patrolled neighborhoods in our community. We are more connected to the citizens in those neighborhoods and work collaboratively with them. And so we recognize the importance of keeping those neighborhoods safe and orderly.
Okay, and I recall that last summer, the police department outlined an action strategy for addressing some of the concerns that are present in those neighborhoods. Can you talk a little bit about some of those strategies as well as the impetus for that last summer?
Yeah, we had a blip of activity, more on the disorder end of the world. And so we revisited what is the right thing to do in the Fourth Ward neighborhood. And we realized that we were connected to one very large neighborhood group. And in doing so, it was so large, in terms of size, with just a few people connected to this neighborhood group, we realized that really wasn't the best circumstance for the community or for the police department. So we developed an 8-point plan. I'll share with you some of the highlights of it. But the first being that we want to work with the Fourth Ward neighborhood in small neighborhood groups. And our officers have gone out and identified 3, 4, 5 block areas that seem to make sense as a small neighborhood group. And we've been reaching out to those neighborhoods and been meeting with them and try and build cooperation and capacity in these small neighborhood groups. And what that will allow us to do is to get more accurate information that's going on in these neighborhoods and more timely information. Because what we found with that other large neighborhood, some of the information we would eventually get would be weeks old. And from a policing standpoint, that doesn't help us much. We need to be on these issues immediately. So the backbone to this new plan is to develop these small neighborhood groups throughout Fourth Ward and probably look west as well. Next, as we worked Look West and Fourth Ward, we had many officers in the departments doing various things in these neighborhoods, whether it's the drug unit or the gang unit or saturation patrols, but we didn't have one supervisor really drawing it all together. So we have assigned, and actually he volunteered, Sergeant Todd Kleisner. He is the sergeant that is going to be in charge of all the different elements that the police department has and kind of be the point person to meet with the neighbors and the neighborhood group meetings to kind of draw this together so we are much more structured in our response. Another element to the plan is we call it Operation Porch Light, and we intend to ask a business in Janesville to donate high-efficiency light bulbs. And we would like to give those out to the neighbors and then ask them to keep their porch lights on at night, because we know that a bright and welcoming neighborhood is not prone to crime and disorder. And we look for good things to come there by just lightening up the neighborhood. We've got street lights down there. We've trimmed the trees. We make sure they're working, but we could probably double the illumination just by turning on those porch lights. And I'd like to share with you, too, our older neighborhoods differ from the newer neighborhoods in that the construction years ago, these homes, the setback was very close to the sidewalk. And in fact, if you go down into Fourth Ward, you will find the steps coming off an elevated porch to stop right at the sidewalk. There is no front yard. It's very close to the public right-of-way. There's at times limited places to park cars. Some of the backyards are not conducive to entertaining people. So what tends to happen is in some of these older neighborhoods, people tend to congregate to the front porch of the home. We've got these beautiful front porches of these homes, and also down into the sidewalk and into the street, because now many people's cars are back at a garage and a driveway. Some of these folks that live in the Fourth Ward and Look West, their cars are out in the street. So it tends to bring these citizens out into the public right away much more than in other neighborhoods. I'll use my house as an example. My setback is probably 75 feet from the street. So when I have family and friends come over, they'll park in my driveway, and we are nowhere near the public right of way, and most people driving by wouldn't even know that there's any activity there. where that's just not the physical circumstance that we see in Fourth Ward. And that lends to this appearance of people on the sidewalks and in the streets. Another part of the plan is our chronic nuisance efforts. Previously, we had one officer work chronic nuisance issues, many times repeated calls for service to a home, or housing issues that people aren't taking care of their homes. But nonetheless, we just had one officer working it and holding property owners accountable for those violations. We've increased our efforts with that. We now have 2 officers on each shift and a sergeant heading that up. So we have officers that are much more aware and gaining the information. And we're calling in an awful lot of landowners, landlords, property owners into the police station and sharing with them, along with our code enforcement folks, that, look, we're having too many calls for service at your home. You need to work with us to reduce those calls for service and keep our neighborhoods orderly. So we made some great strides in that arena as well. So those were the big pieces of the plan. We are going to be in those neighborhoods a lot more this summer, and I think you're going to see a very pleasant year for both of those neighborhoods.
Great. Well, maybe we'll have you back next year and we can get an update on the results of your strategy there. So another issue of great community concern is the presence of illegal drugs, specifically heroin, in not only Janesville, but this region in general. What has the police department seen in the community with the use of heroin? Yeah,
we have a heroin issue in Janesville. We have a heroin issue in Rock County. We have a heroin issue in Wisconsin, and we have a heroin issue in this nation. So this isn't just Janesville. In fact, as I drove into this interview today, Milwaukee was talking that they had more heroin deaths than they had motor vehicle crash deaths in 2014, and significantly more heroin deaths. So this isn't just a Janesville problem, but it's here. We need to work through it. It drives our crime rate. When these typically young adults get addicted to heroin, it's very expensive. The nature of the addiction doesn't allow them to hold down a job, but yet they need the money to buy the heroin, and so it drives our crime. Many times it presents itself in thefts from vehicles, retail thefts, occasionally burglaries and robberies. So this addiction is driving our crime rate. We're addressing it in 3 different areas. First, you need to recognize how heroin presents itself to young adults. And it typically starts out with alcohol and marijuana abuse as a teenager. And then these folks will move on to prescription drugs. And these prescription drugs are oftentimes found in their own home medicine cabinet or their grandparents' medicine cabinet. And these young high school kids or just out of high school kids become addicted to the prescription drugs. And then at some point, either the prescription drugs are unavailable or they're too expensive, and they migrate to heroin as a part of their addiction. I've yet to hear of a young person that just woke up one morning and decided to be a heroin addict. That's not the way it presents itself. It's this system of alcohol and marijuana and prescription drugs, and then ultimately heroin is how we end up being a heroin addict. So given that process, one of the efforts we have is our prescription drop-off box. We've got one in the police department lobby. We're working with Mercy Hospital to try and get more now out into the community. But we want to remove all of those prescription opiates that are sitting in home medicine cabinets away from the home so the kids don't get addicted to those in the beginning. And we can avoid that heroin addiction later on if we get them out of the homes and get them down to the police department so we can destroy them. So that's on the prevention side. Part Part 2 is the enforcement side, and our street crimes unit has heroin as a priority. If we have a heroin case or a heroin overdose, we immediately investigate that. Our street crimes unit officers are on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If we have a heroin overdose, they call our experts in, our heroin experts in, and they start that investigation immediately. That's how much of a priority it is for us. But we also recognize that we can't arrest our way out of this heroin epidemic. And so we have a pilot project. It's with Officer Brian Foster out there to make everybody this and envisioned it, and it looks very hopeful here, at least in the beginning. Officer Brian Foster used to work heroin cases a couple of summers ago, and he went beyond just the enforcement piece and actually connected with these heroin addicts and tried to provide them counseling and services to get off the drug. This last summer, Officer Foster asked to try again, and we said that yes, we should. And what Officer Foster started doing is identifying who the heroin addicts are in our community, and he went up and knocked on their door, and he introduced himself. He says, "I'm Officer Brian Foster. You're going to be seeing a lot of me. I'll be stopping by your home. If you're working, I'll be stopping by your work. If you're out traveling, you may see me because we know that you are using heroin. And at some point, it's going to become difficult for you to obtain heroin because I'm going to be around. And here is my name, and here is my cell number. You can call me whenever you need me, and I will help you with counseling and other services to get you off of the heroin." And it appears to be quite effective. We have, last I talked to Officer Foster, he had 17 heroin addicts that he was helping to get off the drug. And he is getting them into counseling. He's helping them get jobs. He's building a support network of family and friends so they don't continue to use the heroin. And where in the beginning he was out contacting these heroin addicts and trying to reduce their ability to get heroin, now the word is out on the street and heroin addicts are coming to him and seeking help. So he's very busy trying to connect these people with the support services so they can actually get off the heroin. I tell you that it's a pilot project because much of what he's doing is social service in nature. And our hope is that eventually we can put some of those responsibilities to other people in the community, and Officer Foster can focus on just identifying and getting the resources lined up. But we're real hopeful with it. In fact, we had a meeting with the Attorney General 2 weeks ago, and the Attorney General of the state of Wisconsin was very interested in our pilot project and is monitoring where this may go. It could end up being a model for other agencies throughout the nation.
Great. Sounds like a very innovative approach to that problem. So another topic that's relevant now and that you're very familiar with, I'm sure, is the national civil unrest over race relations and policing. This is certainly not a new topic, but it's been brought to light in the last 6 months or so because of events such as Ferguson, Missouri. How do these sorts of issues affect the Janesville Police Department?
Yeah, those issues came on with a fury. I agree. They affect our officers, they affect our department, but let's step back a moment and have just a short discussion as to why people follow the law. And there's two reasons that citizens follow the law. They believe that the law is just and fair, and then they have trust in their local police department in our efforts to enforce the law. So it's not because we go out there and we arrest people and we lock people up and we search homes and we issue citations, but that it's that inherent trust in our system of government and our system of law, and the trust in your local police department that you're being treated fairly, legitimately, and justly. So that's kind of the backdrop as to why almost all citizens follow the law. Trust me, there's not enough officers out there to make everybody lawful citizens. It's this inherent desire to follow the law. So when things like Ferguson, Missouri, or New York and other issues around the nation occur, I question what kind of trust did they have in that police department. And I got to believe that is part of the issue as to why things did not go well in those communities. So we work very hard to build that trust, build that cooperation, build that capacity with our community, so we kind of offset, some of those negative things that could come when officers have to make very tough decisions. I can tell you when Ferguson, Missouri happened, our local media, as they should, were calling and saying, "What is this about? What is your department doing, Chief, to make sure this doesn't happen?" We were very fortunate at the Janesville Police Department. Some of the national trends that have come out of Ferguson, Missouri and New York City, we have already done. In particular, we have 100% of our police department trained civilian staff and officers, myself right down to the newest hired records clerk, trained in fair and impartial policing. And this takes directly head on the issue of bias in America, and particularly bias in policing. And that training that we have, and we've got trained officers on it that actually deliver the training, has been the training of preference throughout the nation. We're seeing it out there in Ferguson, Missouri, and St. Louis County as the training of preference to offset what had happened there. The second issue is the body cameras. The nation is rapidly obtaining body cameras. They think that's part of the fix to what police officers are doing out there, so you can actually see what's going on from the officer's perspective. We've had body cameras for over 5 years. Our officers ask for them, they use them all the time, and it's been very good for us. And then also this connection to the community. The next, and what I think to be the next training frontier, if you will, is procedural justice training. We're coordinating with the University of Illinois now. I hope to have it done by May 1st. But procedural justice training, in a very brief explanation, it's not so much what we do, but how we do it. And training officers to take an extra moment and explain why we have done certain things. And it really builds that trust in your police department that we're doing the right things for our citizens. So we're very anxious to bring that on board. And I think that is going to be the next training frontier, if you will, as we go into these trust issues with our communities and policing.
Okay. And you mentioned the body cameras. Now, do all officers always have those on? How does that work?
About 90% of the time. We've got 42 body cameras. I'd like to have one for every officer, but they cost a lot of money. So sure. We change, and a couple officers share a body camera. But if you encounter a police officer out in the field, there's about a 90% chance he or she will be having a body camera. You'll see some of the cameras are attached to their glasses. Some are attached to their lapel or their collar. And what that allows is, as the officer turns, you can actually see what the officer is seeing. But it's worked out very well for us. It's interesting. We've had some individuals that were getting ready to fight with the police officer, and they'll ask, "Do you have that camera on?" And we'll say, "Yes, we do." And then they're willing to have the handcuffs put on them. We've had citizens call down and tell us that the officers have said these terrible things. And we urge the citizen to then come down and, we'd like to look at the video with you, and we'll see exactly what was said. And oftentimes the citizen says, "No, I guess it really wasn't like that. I guess I don't need to come down." We still go back and look at the video, but what would be a citizen complaint and the officer saying one thing and the citizen saying another, we can actually look at the video and accurately see what was said and what was done. So it's worked out very well for us, and like I say, our officers, welcome the chance to wear those.
Yeah, it sounds like it's good for both parties.
It really is, yeah.
Interaction, yeah. Well, we don't have a whole lot of time left. If our viewers at home have additional questions about any of the issues we talked about today, or really anything related to the police department, how can they contact the department?
Yes, call our non-emergency line, 755-3100. You can ask for me or any officer you may know down there, and we'd be glad to answer it. I would urge you to apply via our website, Nixle. We push out information often as to what's going on in the community. It could be information about a crime, or it could be simply that the interstate's closed down because of a crash, and you could go an alternative way. But we are pushing information out often. Janesville Police Department has a YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and search Janesville Police Department, you can see some of our YouTube efforts out there. Sometimes it's the videos off of the body cameras as well. But our website is just a real good place to start. Our contact information is there as well.
Okay, great. And some of the things you mentioned today, graffiti, drug deals, etc. If a resident sees something like that happening, what should they do? Please
call. We really rely on our citizens to help us to get to these issues. Crime Stoppers, if you don't want to designate who you are, certainly go through Crime Stoppers. You can text or call on that. The non-emergency number at the 911 system is 757-2244. Please call there. But whatever method you choose, just get in touch with us and we'll take care of the issues.
Okay, great. Well, I always like to close, Chief, with some rapid-fire questions that are just for fun, but they allow us to get to know you a little bit better. So, you ready?
I am.
Okay, well, I understand that in your spare time you fly planes. What's the best place to fly over?
It's not so much the best place as the best time. I really enjoy flying over Janesville at about 4,000 feet at the nighttime when it's dark out. The city lights are tremendous, and it's just a really beautiful and serene view over Janesville.
Okay. Maybe a future episode of Park Place Views, we'll have to get up in the plane with you there. What's your favorite Janesville event?
National Night Out. We are able to bring 2,000-3,000 families and kids down to the Janesville Police Department. Our officers get a chance to meet with them. We can show some of the entities that we have, such as the canines or the SWAT team. But what's important for us is some of those kids that are very young can meet with a police officer early in life and understand that we are there to help them. And because sometimes I think they have the other view. So we really enjoy getting in touch with those kids.
Great. Not to mention the free food is always.
We always have free food. That is the attraction.
Okay. Tell us something about yourself that we wouldn't necessarily expect to hear from a police chief.
I am good for at least one mistake a day. I always hope I get it out of the way early, but I'm always making some mistake either at home or at work. But hopefully they aren't too big of issues.
Yeah. How about what's the best and the worst thing about a Wisconsin winter?
Snow and snow. I tire of getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and having to shovel my driveway to get to work, but on the weekends when you get a real nice, pretty snow and you can sit by the fireplace, that's pretty enjoyable too.
Good, good. And finally, my favorite question, what would your wife say is the most annoying thing about you?
When I fall asleep at night, I have the remote control for the TV in my hand, and she tries to sneak it out of my hand when she thinks I'm sleeping, and I tell her, nice try.
That sounds familiar, actually, in our house. So as we wrap up, Chief, are there any last thoughts you'd like to share with our viewers at home?
Yeah, just stay connected to the department, whether it's through Nixle, our website, calling the non-emergency line, Crime Stoppers, whatever method you choose, please stay connected. We only have 102 officers out there to keep 63,500 people safe. There's only so much we can do without your help, so I really urge people to stay connected with us and report issues that are concerning.
Great. Well, we're glad to have you here, Chief. Thank you very much. And thank you, viewers at home, for tuning in today to Park Place Views. Be sure to join next month when we'll be talking with Recreation Director Shelley Slapak and Parks Director Cullen Slapak about both the Riverside Park Splash Pad and the Bond Park Skate Park, which will be constructed this year. And in addition to Park Place Views, there's a lot of ways you can stay connected to the City of Janesville on a more regular basis. You can always like us on Facebook, and of course, like the police department on Facebook while you're at it. You can follow us on Twitter. As Chief Moore mentioned, sign up to receive alerts from Nixle regarding emergency issues. And also you can sign up for our emails through our website, where you'll get notifications about snow emergencies, road closures, program cancellations, general news, and a lot more. For Park Place Views and the City of Janesville, Wisconsin's Park Place, I'm Maggie Hrdlicka. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.
The City of Janesville, Wisconsin's Park Place. Our mission is to innovatively provide effective municipal services that are responsive to the needs of residents, businesses, and visitors, and delivered in a reliable, efficient manner in order to sustain Janesville as the community of choice. The city workforce has identified 4 core organizational values: adaptability, respect, service, communication. Adaptability. We are creative and flexible in response to our community's changing needs. Respect. We embrace diversity, empathy, and collaboration through a foundation of mutual respect. Service. We serve with kindness, integrity, and professionalism. We are accountable for making ethical and innovative decisions that reflect community-driven goals. Communication. We value transparency through honest and clear communications.
Our staff consists of over 530 employees working around the clock in many different areas. The City Manager's Office, the City Assessor's Office, the City Attorney's Office, the Clerk Treasurer's Office, the Accounting Division, the Human Resources Division, the Information Technology Division, the Police Department, the Fire Department, Economic Development, the Hedberg Public Library, JATV Media Services. The Department of Public Works oversees 7 divisions within the city: Engineering, Operations, Technical Services, Parks, Building and Development Services, Planning Services, Utilities. The Neighborhood and Community Services Department oversees 3 divisions within the city: Recreation, Housing and Property Maintenance, the Janesville Transit System.
The diverse programs and services our staff provides help us achieve our strategic goal: downtown. To position our downtown as a vibrant neighborhood where commerce, culture, entertainment, and history intersect. Economy. To facilitate continued growth and diversification of our local economy. Financial sustainability. To remain a responsive and forward-thinking steward of financial resources. Image and engagement. To to strategically communicate the city's strengths, priorities, and initiatives while maintaining trust and confidence through effective engagement. Infrastructure, to build upon the community's foundation of well-planned, maintained, dependable, and sustainable infrastructure. Partnerships, to embrace and enhance collaboration with local, regional, national, and global stakeholders to realize shared success. Performance culture, to cultivate an organizational environment that empowers an engaged, innovative, and diverse municipal employee base. Rock River Corridor, to promote, enhance, and respect the unifying feature of our community, safe and healthy community, to advance safety and overall well-being of residents and neighborhoods through cooperation and encouraging an active lifestyle. We work towards these goals because we believe in the Janesville community's vision statement. Wisconsin's Park Place. Discover the community of choice to realize life's opportunities.